What's happening, everybody? Like most bass players, I haven't changed these strings in almost a year, which means we're due for an upgrade. And specifically, we are going to check out Payson Bass Strings and answer the question, are they any good? Now, let's set the stage before we get into the rest of this video. For one, I am, of course, not sponsored in any way by either of these companies. Currently, on the bass, we have Kalium strings, which I got back in June, so almost a year ago, and I still think they sound pretty good, but new strings always sound better. So, Payson Bass Strings, a brand I've never heard of. I saw them on Instagram, posted by Rufus Mann. Great bass player, awesome tone. If you're not following him, please go check out his stuff. And he had posted about them, and I literally bought these as soon as I saw them. But with that all being said, let's check out what these strings sound like now, and then we will change the strings and do the exact same thing and see what the difference is. Hopefully it's pretty good. These were a little bit cheaper. I will list the prices and whatnot either on the screen or in the description. And of course, I'll let you know what I think of them. But of course, the goal is for you to come to your own conclusions. But at the end of this, I'll let you know whether or not I end up sticking with these or I go back and buy some new Kaliums. So that's the plan. Let's get into it. We're at the computer where I've got a Logic Pro session open, and here I have a couple different tracks. I've got 2 songs that I've written, and I exported them both without the bass. So what that allows us to do is I can play along to a couple parts. I'm not going to do both songs all the way through, but we'll jam through a couple parts, and that way it'll give us the current bass tone in the context of the mix. We can listen to the DI, and then I'll change the strings, do the same thing again, and then we can compare and contrast both the DIs, the mix tone, and then the context of the mix. So hopefully this will give us a pretty even comparison. This is the best way I could think to do it. So with that being said, let's go ahead, record some bass tracks, change the strings, do it again, and compare and contrast our results. New strings on this bad boy, got it tuned up. Let's jump into the computer, record some bass tracks, and then we'll do our comparison. Off the bat, obviously they're going to sound different from being new versus, 10 months old or whatever. So we'll have to kind of take that into account. It's not an even comparison because I'm not putting on new Kalium strings right after this. But next time I order bass strings, maybe I'll do the Kalium strings and we can replay some of these clips and then do the comparison. All right, so there we go. We have our bass tracks recorded. Let's get them lined up with the songs and let's see what differences we hear. Okay. First of all, excuse my sloppy playing. This was done quick, and I'm not editing these takes. So. So right away, just listening to these back-to-back like that, we can hear that the Payson bass strings have a very similar overall tone to them. but quite a bit more high-end, or at least a more noticeable high-end. And I'm sure part of that is just due to the Kalium strings being a little wore out. So that's not completely unexpected, but really the thing that I was listening for is that some bass strings that I've tried from certain companies that I won't name, they just sound dull and flat, even brand new. So that was a big concern of mine, especially with these being a company I've never heard of. I was a little concerned just based on some bad experiences. But I'm happy to say that, in my opinion, this is pretty much the kind of sound that I am looking for and expecting out of bass strings. And it's really nice too, because these strings come in a set that is designed for drop G. It's very similar gauges to what I had from the Kalium strings, but the Kalium strings I had to individually pick out each string and get, close enough to the gauges I wanted, whereas this was super convenient and cheaper. So all in all, I'm happy so far, but let's keep listening. So yeah, pretty comparable. Actually, I would say that for not changing the strings in almost a year, like I said, I've had the Kaliums on since last June. I think they sound pretty good still. That's why I don't change them that often. And now, these were the DIs. Let's go ahead and turn on my bass chain, which is extremely simple, just 2 plugins. And let's see how these sound with my normal processing, and then we'll listen again in the context of the mix a little bit. So let's go back here to the start. Wow, okay, so that's actually a little interesting. We did hear a difference in the DI, like I said, not huge, but once you throw on the processing chain, get that distortion in there, the compression, the differences really even out. Just as a quick example, I'm using Neural DSP Parallax, Final New, because, that's how everyone names things. Final version 3. Anyway, these are my settings. This is kind of what I've settled on. And then after that, I've got STL Control Hub Will Putney. This is one of his presets. The EQ might be slightly different than what the default is for this actual preset. I think I tweaked this a little bit, but there you go. If you have these plugins and you want to copy my settings, that's what I do. And then I exported the original songs, like I said, without the bass and without my mix bus. So I have the mix bus on here as well, but we're not going to dive into that because this is not a mix video. But that being said, let's play this in context, switch between the bass tracks, and see if we actually hear a difference. Yeah, I've got to say, listening to them back to back in the mix, pretty hard to tell which is which. So, whether or not that's a good thing or not, I suppose is preference. So, like I said, in context, these are pretty hard to tell apart. The DIs were so close, and The big question I have, though, is that this is how everything sounds now. Like I said, I just put these strings on. You watched me do it. How will these sound, next year? Let's say I revisit this test and I put on some new Kaliums, record them into this session, and then we can see if new Kaliums sound better than new Paysons, or if new Paysons just sound like old Kaliums. I think that'll be an interesting example. So let's set a reminder and see what happens. But that being said, let's continue on and listen to the 7-string track now. So get that low 5th string on the bass in and see if there's any more difference here. Okay, so in the 7-string clip, like I said, we've got that low 5th string on the bass. This is in drop G. I hear a bit of a difference somewhere in the mid. So let's play these again and pull up an EQ and see if there's any noticeable difference or if I'm hearing things. Okay, so yeah, I can't actually hear that much of a difference. Even looking at the EQ graphs, they're fairly similar. So, that is interesting to me. So there we have it. I think the differences I heard at first were not as significant as I thought they were, especially once you add in the distortion and the processing. I mean, that mixed tone that I have is almost exactly the same across the board. So to answer the question, Payson Bass Strings, any good? Absolutely. I think these are a great value for the money. Like I said, they were cheaper than the Kaliums. They arrived a little quicker, maybe. That could just be, depending on where you live, of course. But the convenience, too, of having a pre-made 5-string drop G set versus, like I said, with Kalium, I had to individually go choose the gauges, which is fine, but I think their website is just a little confusing, whereas the Payson Bass website is extremely simple. You literally click it, hit order, fill in your information, call it a day. So tone, excellent, just as good. Price, better. User experience, better. I definitely would recommend them. If you've tried Payson Bass Strings or Kalium strings, let me know what you think of either down in the comments. But all that being said, I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.